Welcome everybody to this webinar series. Bienvenue tout le monde à la série de webinaires. We're so pleased that you joined us today, and this series of webinars is proving very popular. So just before we get started, I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I'll ask all of you to place your feet on the ground and breathe the air at your location. We acknowledge that we're gathering today from coast to coast to coast on the lands of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their governments. We acknowledge that the head office of the CSLA is in unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, and the head office of the AALA, which is our partner for this initiative, is in Treaty 6, Métis Region 4. My name is Michelle Legault, and on behalf of myself and the Executive Director of AALA, Todd Reed, we'd like to welcome you to this webinar series. This series features speakers who were scheduled to speak at the cancelled June 2020 Congress, which was supposed to be in Calgary. We're going to proceed with the presentation, and I would encourage you to ask questions either via the chat box or the Q&A feature. There will be time at the end for discussion. And in addition, the recording will be available on the CSLA website. Now, you're participating today in a Zoom webinar, which means that you can only see the speakers and not all of the participants. So it's slightly different than a Zoom meeting platform. So our speakers today, I'd like to welcome Virginia Burt and Sue Sears, who are presenting Creating Moments in Time, Adding Meaning and Depth to Everyday Practice. Virginia Burt is principal of Virginia Burt Designs. She specializes in healing landscapes and gardens, labyrinths, and sacred spaces for private, residential, and public clients. Her work has achieved international recognition for master planning, private gardens, and healthcare projects, receiving multiple national awards from the ASLA, the CSLA, Palladio, and others. Virginia is one of only 7 women in the world elected to fellowship in both the ASLA and CSLA for her outstanding contributions. The importance of healing environments was relatively unknown in 1996 when Virginia opened the doors of her own firm. She developed a holistic approach that attends to our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects while weaving the meaning of landscapes, genius loci, stakeholder input into evidence-based design. Virginia intensifies ways of working with organizations and public clients to address the diverse needs of the population they serve. In her project work, Virginia attends to the craft of landscape architecture with attention to detail and how things are made. Sue is principal at Outside Landscape Architects, an international award-winning firm dedicated to innovative landscape design with a focus on creating amazing outdoor spaces. Sue is a year-round athlete and avid traveler, and her projects reflect her sense of adventure and love of the outdoors. Areas of practice include design for public spaces and amenities, living walls and green roofs, green building design, landscape restoration, and urban design. Projects are infused with a sense of character that respect the site, creating contemporary outdoor environments, often with a playful twist on traditional design. And so I turn it over to Virginia and Sue for this webinar. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to be able to say, first of all, thank you for attending. What a pleasure it is to be here. We have a problem. Can we start back at the beginning? Sue, there was something there that happened, if we could, please. And okay, all right, there we go. As always, a Zoom meeting presentation has its own moments. And so we're talking about creating moments in time today and adding meaning and depth to everyday practice. So Sue and I have both agreed, and Sue, jump in anytime. We are living.
Yeah, just to say hello from sunny Halifax today.
We're, as we sat down to prepare this particular presentation, what, of course, we all realize is the conversation has changed. Upper left, the Montreal Symphony Orchestra playing at the airport to a drive-in to Vancouver, and it's socially distant aerial photographs of people to doing street parties in some manner, shape, or form to bring joy to all ages. And of course, we're all being welcomed to Nova Scotia, except for this.
So long as you're quarantined for 14 days, you're more than welcome to visit.
And what we realize is, of course, we've become archetypal islands. I've spoken about the 7 landscape archetypes that I work in, and this particular one, what you see here, of course, the artist who's done the work at the High Line with their socially distant dots, paintings, circles in public parks, doing yoga in a bubble, to eating in a little, we are islands, even though, and how do we make these fun? How do we attach meaning to very challenging time in our history?
We said in our initial presentation submission back a year ago that we wanted to talk about some of the amazing research that's being done in nature, in neuroscience, in psychiatry, and environmental psychology. And what Virginia's just talked about, that transition this past year, so much change has happened that you'll see a fair bit of COVID in reference here too. Not just COVID, but many things have taken our attention with political changes around the world, Lives Matter, global pandemic. I'm calling it the Great Global Pause this year. So you'll see that referenced.
Edward O. Wilson, of course, in Biophilia, he literally has encapsulated with his words about nature holding the key. And I think that when we speak about, and biophilia, really, if we speak of it, it's a powerful way of understanding and examining the bond that we as humans have with other species and living systems. So if you could take a moment and breathe this photo in, seeing the ocean, the rocks, trees, grass. And this is what NASA, this is what Houston would know. Your heart rate just went down, your blood pressure just went down, your salivary cortisol went down, your mental outlook improved, and your muscle tension reduced. This is what we know when astronauts would gaze at a scene in nature. In particular, when we look at scenes that have water in them, when we have scenes that have, of course, have trees, when we are immersed in woods, we know that this happens. So the power of nature. Ulrich's 1984 literally a seminal piece of research. Suddenly we realized that a view of nature decreases analgesic use. We can handle pain better. Claire Cooper Marcus, of course, in her work, 68 to 88% felt calmer and more relaxed. People feel $10,000 richer with Berman's work in 2015. But what we really know is productivity increases when we have views of nature from our office. We have plants, children do better, crime rates decrease, we save money in healthcare. All of these things have become equated. So considering that, we also, actually there's one other piece here. What we also know, and one of our great crises in our forests right now of the emerald ash borer, the US Forest Service actually did a study, said that 20,000 additional deaths occurred when all of those ash trees got taken down. But it's also fascinating about the subtler details, the health benefits stem from trees planted along streets and in front yards where people can access them as they walk by. So public space has taken on new meaning. Nature. And if you're not familiar with what a Doshan smile is, it's the one that makes your eyes crinkle when you when you really do. But here's the thing, you also stand closer to the person who delivered them, whether you know them or not. You feel happier, calmer, a more intimate connection with the person who gave them to you. More importantly, the next time and when we are finally back to being able to take gifts to dinner parties, take flowers. They'll remember it for years after, rather than taking a book or some sort of hostess gift. Flowers are the ticket. So let's just look at some of this. Imagine for a moment the flowers that we see in a tulip tree, or at another season, those same flowers as a snow cone.
When I was a kid growing up, my mother had a career in neuroscience. And a fascination and a love for Star Trek. And she always talked at the dinner table about how neuroscience was the human brain was the last frontier, and I'm fascinated as you know, throughout my years of practice, that this has really come true. There's been so much information that's evolved, that we know now, that can be used to inform our practice. Mom did a presentation on brain surgery and all the different stages of brain surgery, and what she did was intersperse every slide of neuroscience, of neurosurgery, with a picture of her garden. And she did that because she knew people would pay attention to the garden. They could focus. There was better learning when she did that. It informed my life for sure, and my interest of science in science. It's a base for me to start from, right? It's an understanding, a framework, and I know in this past year we have used this front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. It's the part that does all of the executive function work. It's where we get our creativity from. It's the hub of creativity, not the only part, but it's the hub. It's all our critical thinking, problem solving, decision making. Think about how much we've had to adopt and change over the course of this year. Multitasking, it also drains. That multitasking piece is really important. I've been curious about David Strayer's work. He does a lot of research in this field. He's from from Utah University, and he's because we've all been called to research, or to do the multitasking this year to a far greater extent as we adapt our processes and protocols and figure out how to manage the kids while we're working from home. So what turns out though is that only 2% of us can actually multitask well. That's not many of us. That's vast majority of us on this call cannot multitask. But our efforts to do that are wasting about 25% of our workday. That's a big deal. What he did was take two groups of participants and had them take the same walk through an arboretum. He had one group leave all their digital technology behind, including their earphones, listening to music. That wasn't okay. No cell phones, nothing. The second group, same walk, he asked them to talk on a phone call the whole time. These EEGs were taken 20 minutes later. You can see the one on the left is green. It is showing low theta activity. It is showing a rested brain. The one on the right-hand side, the red one, is showing a high level of activity, no restoration benefit. The brain is still working even 20 minutes later. Think about that. The other key thing is that people only remembered half of what they saw when they were on their cell phone at the same time. So next time you're out walking in the woods, you might be getting your fitness value, but think about it. Which one of these things would you rather not see, or you may not have seen? There's such a thing as a smartphone induced brain drain. Again, I found this really very, very interesting and applicable. Even having the presence of my phone around is actually draining my cognitive abilities, which might explain why I love swimming so much. Ocean swimming, nobody can reach me. You cannot contact me. There are no disruptions. It is a lovely thing. One of the things in this past year in particular that I have found incredibly restorative. Another thing is my work with the Mi'kmaq community here, and a beautiful term, two-eyed seeing, from Elder Albert Marshall from Eskazoni community. They are asking us to use two lenses, two-eyed seeing, blending our Western way of understanding and our knowledge. So that's all our botanical names and how we understand plants, with indigenous ways of knowing, with greater interconnectedness, more holistic, non-hierarchical, And the medicinal plant component, my same Acadian forest community, I am looking at with a wonderful new set of eyes. Gold thread on the side image is the me walking around looking at my Acadian forest in a whole new way. And most importantly, there's a spiritual connection here that felt really valuable, but I also felt better walking around in the forest. The Mayo Clinic says kids should have no more than 2 hours of on screen time. Think about that in this past year. How much time have we all spent on our computers, on our digital technology? Notice that it dampens creativity. That's a big deal for us in our work world.
Of course, we have to turn to the grandfather for a brief moment just to look at it and recognize that the enjoyment of scenery employs the mind without fatigue. And this whole idea of creating refreshing rest and reinvigoration to the whole system. This is, of course, his introduction to Yosemite and the Mariposa Grove, but it still holds true today. It's really how we speak about awe. How do we create a greater sense of time and happiness for ourselves? How we might feel more generous is what the studies show, how it can make you healthier. So, and although we're saying ourselves, this is also exposing your clients to the same. And when we feel awe, okay, keep going. So, this speck in the Northwest Territories of what I feel like as we go to visit the off ice, just that sense of awe to look at just the absolute grandness of it. And how we might go to remote places, appreciate a sunset. And what we know, here's the thing about spaces in nature. 3 overarching mind-body systems get a benefit: cognitive functionality and performance, psychological and physiological, so the health and well-being. What we know is that there's another piece here, folks. I often speak about it. Not everybody wants to, but I will say in my world, a 4th one happens. It is our spiritual health and well-being. We walk this mystical path as landscape architects. We walk it with practical feet. What are the things that help us stimulate the mystical part of our being, of being able to take that forward, the magic of what happens when we do design work? And how do we translate that into design? To me, I'm a big fan of John Roger and John Morton, and it really is being able to have practical spirituality. It's the thing that helps us touch in a moment another person. It might make us smile. But it helps us do one thing and one thing only, in my opinion. The start of it is uplifting myself so I can uplift others. Take care of myself so I can take care of others. Keep going. And spatial configurations matter in this kind of thing. So when we're the next time designing, be it a park, a home, a place, think about these things. Prospect, an unimpeded view, reduces stress, proven to be so, 2010. The next one, refuge. You actually get reduced boredom and fatigue. You have improved concentration, perception of safety and attention. Or, well, and I'll say in the world of mystery, it induced a strong pleasure response because we're promising that next thing of being able to take people forward. And then, of course, risk and peril. These days, an identifiable threat coupled with a reliable safeguard. But I think it results in a strong dopamine or pleasure response. And so examples of this include prospect. Go ahead. Long and short views, Those long and short views, by the way, less than 6 meters isn't considered prospect, just FYI. So going for the bigger view. The second one, refuge. Of course, I'm using a Winnipeg version. Of course, we have to have winter in our pictures, but here's the other part. I'll just say that's Wallagrin on the right. This gentleman wrote, if you haven't read it, The Secret Life of Trees. Keep going, Sue. Improving our attention, concentration, that there's mystery. The piece here, please click. We have a great amount of pleasure knowing that we want to go that next step around the next curve. And if you could go forward. And then risk or peril. The Canadian side of the Niagara Falls, being able to step to that very edge. Perhaps skateboarding on the whale sculpture in Halifax, or perhaps going over a narrow bridge over a 15-foot height. But what happens for us is we have pleasure when we've done that. And it takes us into a bit about play. Go ahead. What we know is that nature connects us. And here, Tai Chi in a public place called Itabashi Garden. It is the connective tissue. Even in our hardscape would be, and I look at this and I think of our cities and look at how the green gets to fill in the cracks and connect us. Keep going. And Thoreau, we need this tonic of wildness. And at the same time, we earnest to explore and learn. Can we ever have enough of nature? To me, when I think of it, when we think about play, when we think about how in places that we create as landscape architects, how do we do rewilding and how do we best do that? Keep going. Well, so less than 5% of their day, Americans, 30% of Canadians spend less than 5 minutes outside in a day. I think that we have some work to do, folks. What do we really know? It takes 120 minutes or 8% of your day for people to feel like they stay healthy. How can you convince your clients, the people who attend your parks, to be out there for 120 minutes? And the other part is, of course, 2 hours a week in a green space. And this is that was in Exeter in England, substantially more likely to report good health and psychological well-being than those that don't. But 2 hours a week was hard. There were no benefits really shown, or they couldn't measure them, let's say it that way, if they were out there for less.
And there's research that talks about the 3-day effect in nature. If you're lucky enough to be able to hike down into the canyon, this one in Grand Gulch or somewhere else, where you can actually leave your technology behind. The research supports you taking that kind of time. The benefits, it takes us that kind of time to disconnect, and our brain comes out rested, and we have a 50% increase in creativity. That's astounding. If I could do my work in half the time, who's not going to sign up for that? It's interesting though, this piece around the Wi-Fi. This is a project site, and by no means am I saying that we shouldn't be using our Wi-Fi everywhere. But I realize I'm starting as a landscape architect to have very different conversations with different people about the technology. And because we've been putting Wi-Fi in outside all over the place, and additional technology, television screens, clients request, outdoor sound systems, that kind of thing. Here, in some of our rural Nova Scotia incredible properties, I realize I actually need to have the conversation to talk about the benefits of not having technology in some of these places. A very different conversation from our clients that have our public clients where we actually do really need internet service. High density communities like this one rely on our additional USB ports and electrical outlets and all those things during storm activity when the libraries are shut because of pandemics. We need that. So, but I'm very interested that there's a conversation happening in my head around technology and how we use it in natural environments. The learning piece, lots to support views and exposure to or being outside for learning benefits. One thing I want to highlight on this slide, though, is that the views to trees and shrubs are the things that are the benefit. It's not the same benefit, but same learning outcome for kids that just or people that are just looking at sod. We need more, and there needs to be a degree of naturalness associated with that. Attention restoration theory. So ART was put forward years ago by the Kaplans, but many researchers are building on the work that they've done, including Strayer's work with the brain scans that we saw earlier. There's a lot in this work and a lot emerging from this work. But one piece I want to talk about is soft and hard fascination. So watching our slide presentation is focused, hard attention, right? We're very focused. And soft attention is gazing out to nature, being in nature, feeling that breeze on your face, that relaxed brain span. This is looking at bandwidth. So if you're feeling like you've done a lot over the course of the last year and your bandwidth is a little short and you're trying to figure out how to restore it, this was an interesting study. It looked at 4 different ways to restore your bandwidth. Your phone, scrolling through your phone at the end of the day, checking social media, TV, home, and nature. So your perceived restorative benefit and the actual mental bandwidth improvements, and hands down, being out in nature was the thing that improved people's sense of improving their mental bandwidth, their capacity to carry on and do more.
So one of the things, we had talked about is how do we do this ourselves? How do we prepare ourselves to take this journey? As Mary Oliver says, there's little the creatively inclined person can do except to prepare body and spirit for the labor to come. And I will just say to you, rather than binging on Bridgerton, consider looking at a picture like this or simply going for a walk. Um, you know, I recognize in some ways it seems so simplistic, yet as Sue and I delved into this deeper and deeper and deeper, it truly is that simple, is how you bring forward your spirit using meditation, being able to use nature to help you do that. Keep going, Sue, and I don't want to digress. So, and is it enough to walk on the treadmill with a plant? Perhaps not. However, if you keep going, what we know is that we get elevated when we get green exercise. And my concern, of course, also goes that the IQ gains in developed nations are not only leveling off. These research is now showing that it's almost declining as the fitness declines and screen moves in. In the world of COVID-19, our screen time, I don't know if you get your little, how many hours you've spent per day on average every week. I get one of those little notifications. And I'll just say, we need to be able to do this differently and continue to do it differently, but to do it intentionally and to make the right kinds of choices that support you to be able to be your best self and show up. Keep going. So Expo 67, I would be the little girl in that dory. This is a Cornelia von Oberländer seminal piece, of course, but really what it's talking about. And I actually played in that dory. My father, when he went to take me inside, because it was really, if you know the story about this playground, it was an afterthought, because this is a waiting area for them to go in and do this special cognitive testing that they wanted to do on children. And yet this became the most popular area of the entire thing. But unself-conscious play, being immersed in an outdoor activity and simply engaged, back to the same thing, soft fascination, and yet having a little bit of risk. You can see the boat is, you're going to get wet if you fall out. Keep going.
And I'm particularly interested in the research around adults at play, because I think it's one of the things we don't talk about enough. And it's one of the things I think people are longing for. Nova Scotia has this wonderful surf, and here I am with my pals sneaking off to catch the best surf. That brings us joy to play with a goofy little board, to play in the water. It serves no obvious purpose, except it's really fun and it brings a human connection when we play. It's also excellent rest for the brain. I'm interested too that our clients are seeking out more playful things too. Maybe it's just the work that I'm involved in, but I feel like my inner 4-year-old snuck out on a number of our projects. Jerome the gnome, the submarine playground, those kinds of things are truly sort of harkening back to a fun and playful element. But it's what I'm learning, that watching the kids is a really great way to go because they do it naturally, and giving ourselves permission and our clients permission to spend time in that oversized hammock, maybe with your kids, watching the sunset, enjoying that time, and knowing that it's okay to have that downtime, and bringing more of that into our work.
I think that as we move into this, and if you could please advance, um, again, Mary Oliver, around me the trees stir in their leaves and call out, stay a while. The light flows from their branches and they call again, it's simple, they say. And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light and to shine. And if you could go to the next slide, I often speak about meditation and how important being able to find your time to fill up so that you have enough to give. And it's a micro scale thing that they are now so aware of. And again, research shows quiet time, not on a handheld device, but quiet time, because there's of course lots of apps for that too. But consider just being able to breathe on your own quietly for a moment looking outside. I also speak about intention and being able to become more aware of having the intention of anchoring more light, of being able to, we long for connection. We long for the idea, and it's such simple things to consider. Making and having a smile yourself, and being able to, when you smile yourself, you invite others to smile with you. I often say to the folks in my office, it by adding a little bit of humor, one goes a long way, and it helps us journey. We take it seriously, sure, but we also have to journey with these, and I'm going to call it sacred trusts that we have with our clients, of being able to come forward with the best work that we can give. And so where intention goes, energy flows. So I need you to, yeah, thanks. You know, and when we capture, this is a piece about capturing moments and appreciating moments. We're moving pretty fast these days. How do we be able to create a little bit of a pause? And have you been outside today? Have you gone outside just to breathe the air, have the sunshine on your face for a brief moment? Reached for the sky, putting forward intention of being and making a richer life for yourself and for others. So How do we become more keenly aware of the way the outdoors truly affects us? How can we offer that true connection to nature? The next time we're specifying things, look towards natural materials, look towards making choices of biophilia, of patterns that engender nature. Tolkien says it well. As soon as Frodo says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," his response, paraphrased, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us.
As we reflect on the research that we've done and how we can take this into practice, it's interesting to think about how we might be able to incorporate more time into for reflection into our lives, but not just our own. The clients that we serve and the extension of the work that we do into the broader community. How can we bring more reflection time into our own lives so we're better able to meet those goals? Um, how can we figure out how to spend more time outside? What's what might we need to do to make that happen? Is it possible to leave our phones behind and our technology behind more often? I think about these things and I noticed one example that I've had this year that just makes me laugh. Is I was pretty tied to those COVID numbers in the early days and watching them. And I mean, obviously, that's not a great way to spend my time, but somehow Netflix and the technology that we have can be quite addictive. So I've decided I have switched up my daily check of COVID numbers for a check-in with the Daily Otter, which is a global network of happy otter photos from around the world. It makes me smile. It cheers me up, and I can move on with a little smile on my face.
You know, one of the things as creatives, all of us who are attending today, is that it takes courage. It takes courage to be a creative. It takes courage to stand before people and speak of things of the heart. It takes courage to create your own world. Georgia O'Keeffe, such a great inspiration. And so, where do we turn? And the piece for me, and you may have noticed in our presentation, we have intentionally every other slide included a photograph of nature, of being able to call you, I'm going to call all of us to the level of appreciation that is deeper. That's all. The appreciation of others, the appreciation of ourselves, of us as beings, of us being able to add meaning to the smallest thing, and having the courage to create that world, of that inner world. Because if you can create it in your inner world, you create it in your outer world.
And on that wonderful note, we'd like to conclude with a thank you and a wide open invitation to come to CSLA Congress 2022 in Halifax. Um, by then, we are hoping that our conferences will be back in person because let's face it, we need our people time, face to face time. And we, of course, in the Maritimes are known for our kitchen parties, and we need a really good kitchen party coming out of this time. So we look forward to seeing you here in Halifax. Come the blazes to Nova Scotia. And
Thank you so much, Sue and Virginia.
and at this
Pardon me?
Thank you so much for that great invitation and that great presentation.
And at this point, I'm going to stop screen sharing, Michelle, and let you take the questions. And we're delighted
Sure.
to respond.
Thank you so much. That was really so engaging and so interesting. And those nature photos, they really do it. They really lower your heart rate. So thank you for sharing that with us and all that beauty. If anybody has any questions or any discussion, please do ask through the chat. You can also use the question and answer feature, and I can relay your questions to Virginia and to Sue. And if you are wanting to learn more about the 2022 Congress, we're going to be sharing information very soon, but it is June 9th to the 11th in Halifax. And after canceling the 2020 Congress and then going virtual in May 2021, I think we'll need a really good kitchen party. So I'm ready for it, Sue. So maybe even in your kitchen, we'll see.
Bring your fiddle, Michelle.
I play a guitar, actually. I'll bring that.
Perfect.
I'm going to be in the fire pit. I'm going to be in the fire pit on the beach, close to the woods. Just everybody knows.
So we've had a few. Mindy Tyndall said, phenomenal presentation, very inspiring. Love the anecdote about the brain surgery. Karen in the Northwest Territories is wondering if we could give the reference again to the 120 minutes a day in nature. And so that's one of the slides that we'll share after. We'll be putting this online. But did you want to recap that 120 minutes a day in nature slide for Karen?
I'm just going to go back to it. I know that we have that.
And while you're looking for that, we have some thanks coming in. People saying they're going to be there in 2022 and wouldn't miss it. Have comments like an awesome presentation, soothing presentation, a great reminder to maintaining our connection to nature.
Mm-hmm. I forgot a stat we didn't get mentioned while Virginia's pulling up her slide there, is that there's recent research to 2020, late 2020 research that's showing that of 7,000 COVID transmissions, only 5 of them happened outside. And I think that over this time, that connection back to nature is, people are longing for it. We're seeing people getting outside that really have never done it before. We're getting calls and people asking us to help make the connection back to nature. And so but it was a really great stat. It's great for the profession. When we see those kinds of numbers saying we're better off outside. Yeah.
It's the Matthew White of the European Centre for Environment and Human Health, University of Exeter. It is all on the slide. Okay, just so that for that person, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing who it was that actually asked that question. So I'll just say,
Karen. Yep, it's Karen Lagrelli-Ham in Northwest Territories.
Thank you, Karen. But it is on that slide, so it'll be posted, right, Michelle?
It will. We'll be posting that. We also have Ian Robertson in the Yukon asking, how do you address noise in your design work, given the focus of this wonderful presentation?
Mm-hmm. I will respond with one thing that I find. I think that the first piece is when I can't see the source of sound, I find that is helpful, right? So I use screening visually to help that next layer, which is the being able to actually screen sound. When we do that, and of course, we talk about water when we can, but I think that it's really about creating focus, and that becomes a very important piece. So being able to focus on other things, and that is, it's really, other than noise attenuation, it is also being able to focus on other things. And so natural distractions are excellent for that. Now I see Josh Weber says aspen makes a great chatter. So does corn in the winter.
Yes,
now,
that's right.
do we have? Can you recommend particular? I'm seeing one here that says particular publications that cover all or most of the points. We've created a bibliography. Is there only one there's not really only one
No.
Alan, but what I'll say to you is one that I have found fascinating that I read about 5 years ago is Your Brain on Nature by Shalhoub, and I'm trying to think of the other person. We'll supply a bibliography to Michelle, so you're going to have that. We have a whole. It's quite a long list, so we will send that to you.
We also have Shannon who asks, can you please share some strategies for convincing clients about the importance of opportunities for nature connection in your design work?
I'd love to chat about this because this sometimes is very difficult to do. And I spoke a tiny bit about it, but when we have all of the electronics to put outside, I can speak to an example where we have clients who want to put large amounts of outdoor sound equipment in place. I work beside the sea. They've got the sounds, the wonderful sounds of the ocean right there beside them, and they're covering them with piped in music. Lovely idea, great intention to have music for many of it, but to actually stand, what I do is stand there with people in silence, and it can be uncomfortable standing in silence. But as soon as you start to point out the sound of those stones rolling along the shore, the action of the waves, the feel of that, the movement and the sound, it is a helpful tool to stand in silence, even though sometimes awkward.
I'm watching a few things. Thanks, Sue. I'm watching a few things. Has anyone ever quantified the benefits of different types of gardens, formal versus wild? Yes, there are a few references to that. I will say, and you notice that we touched on it about the students learning that a formal or a grass panel does not do the job. Right? It's trees and shrubs, of being able to have a various scales of plants, as well as being able to integrate those 4 other items, the prospect refuge, of being able to instill mystery and peril. So, or risk peril. I will just say I have come across it. I will need to go back to find that to be able to give you an exact reference. But yes, indeed, there are. No matter what, gardens, first and foremost, green spaces intentionally made will definitely counterbalance the urban. Okay, so different types of gardens. I'll see if I can find that next piece. Beautiful scenery creation could help in high density societies as well, like in cities where it's mainly people living in apartments. I think regardless, so that's to Elham, I think it is. I'll just say it this way. Every inch needs, as our cities become more and more dense, as we move into the cities. I mean, I grew up on a farm. There's so many people who no longer even know where the chicken comes from in the grocery store. So I will just say to you, for people in apartments, as much community garden work, as much adding and teaching how people can grow and grow their own thing. There's just so many aspects to being able to involve people in their, and I'm going to call it greening of their community. It's never more important. Like just painting the top of a building green with a green roof is not enough. It's just not enough. We've got to be able to look at this and be able to start to attach how important. I mean, I'm working on a project right now where the architects came to us and said, gee, we want to put landscape first. I was like, wow, I'm using references from 30 years ago because it's stuff that we know as landscape architects. So I'll just say, yeah.
We
Mhm.
have a question from Selena as well, who asks, do you make mindfulness and meditation a conscious part of your workday, or is that better done at home, separate from the practice?
Hello, Selena. Good to good to see you online. I can speak to this in the sense that I do have a practice at home, and I find my work days very busy. They're rich and full, and while this is important to me, having a practice, the office doesn't have a practice, if that's what you're asking. Although we have views to nature from our windows. So that piece is really important and I use it. I look out my window. Right now, I am looking at a sun that will be setting in an hour and a half. It is still high. I see my maple trees, elm trees, ash trees out my window, and I use that as a reference for those calming moments when I need them.
Um, Donna, thank you. Could you write a book for landscape architects? Sure, be
Sure.
happy to. And I'll say, I've recently moved my office from my home, but I'll say this: every day is started by getting up 20 minutes before I think I should to do meditation first. Um, why? Because it sets up my day. And do I do it in the office? Yeah, you know what in I go outside. That's how I do it. I put on my coat and hat and I head outside, even if it's for 5 minutes, like I did before this. The days are indeed very, very busy, and just being able to take the time. I think we, and for those of us who are in private practice, we're busy working to be as efficient and as fast as we can be at things. One of the statistics that didn't get said is when you are interrupted, it
Mhm.
takes 40 minutes for you to get back to where you were when you're in the midst of a design process or in the midst of, but it takes 40 minutes. In a world where we count those minutes, it's important that we have quiet time. We
Mhm.
have time that we don't get interrupted. I'm not sure that I'm perfect at it for sure, but remains an intention.
I'm
So,
following the chat here and just backing up to Joanne, and taking that pause in the moment, like Virginia was talking about in the morning. Joanne, you mentioned that you're a former resident of St. Margaret's Bay, and indeed, that first slide of the winter shore is in fact Seabright, Nova Scotia, where I spend my morning meditation time, either in the water or on the shore, and it's incredibly restorative. So you should come home sometime soon.
So we have a lot of questions in the Q&A as well, and a few minutes left, but Barbara has an interesting question. She asks, do you have any sense that our recovery from the pandemic and the desire to return to normal will include more time in nature than people have gotten used to? And can you suggest how designers can help to encourage that direction?
Okay, so Sue and I probably both want to speak to this, don't we?
Yes, go
um,
first.
okay, so Barbara, I would say first of all, yes. I have so many things running through my head. I have silence. Okay, so just a moment here. But I'll just say this: I think the conversation has changed. I think that where, and I'm going to say it this way, where developers have just looked at things and said, what kind of amenities can we provide for people? Suddenly, they are like, how do we create places and spaces that people will enjoy nature? It's a different conversation because people are outside craving it. I saw somebody with the chat saying that multi-use trails have tripled. Well, I'm just down the road from Conservation Authority where they are now taking, just like booking a golf game, you book your walk,
Mhm.
and quite frankly, they are so busy. They've never been as successful as they are now, and I think it has changed the conversation. And I think that this whole idea, will it take us 10 years to get back to, somebody said to me, it's going to take us 10 years to forget. And I thought to myself, wow, I think more than anything else, people have realized how important it is to get outside, because they're, when you are mandated to be at home, I don't think gardens have ever looked so good for many of my clients, frankly, because they're outside doing it. Anyway, okay, Sue, you go.
There's interesting research too that's showing that for those of us who regularly got outside pre-COVID and had a regular exercise routine, stuck to it, COVID hit us pretty hard. And a lot of people had a hard time keeping up those routines. The opposite was also true. People that didn't normally go outside spent more time outside, and I found that really interesting. I'm aware in the work that we're doing right now, I am dealing with calls where people are longing for more information about the land that is around them. I was just hired to literally walk and talk about the land. Just come and share with them what was on the property, a residential property. What is it about? What are the trees? What should we look for? How do we benefit from this? How do we get restorative value out of the forest we already have? Great questions.
Thanks, Carolyn. Lovely words. I'm so appreciating all the folks who are sending chats.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see.
So we are running out of time. We might have time for one more question. There's some of the Q&A that's coming in here, which is really interesting as well. Wei asks if you have any experience in designing healing gardens by working with native plants and playful elements.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be accurate.
The answer is yes, with a big Y.
Yeah.
Yes. Look at
it. Yes is a complete answer.
Yes is a complete answer.
Thank you. So what we'll do is there might be lots more questions you can think of. If there's something specific you'd like to ask Virginia and Sue, you can always send me an email and I will forward it to them. And I'm the executive director at CSLA email address that invades your inbox on a fairly regular basis. So to both of you ladies, thank you so much for such an engaging presentation. I think we really felt this one personally. I know there were several moments there where I thought, oh yes, I see that in my children, or I see that in my family, or I see it when we go to the cottage. So thank you very much for something that really has touched us all. The next event in this series is on March 11th at 2:30 p.m., where Jonathan Cha will present towards a model of planning and management of large urban parks. This presentation will actually be given en français, and the webinar will be made available after with subtitles following the presentation. So you'll be able to hear it in person in French and then after in English. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. We're a large group of participants, and so we're so pleased with your participation today. And again, a big round of applause, if we could, to Sue and to Virginia for your great presentation. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, everybody. So appreciate all of your words. And I'm just like, my heart fills just to see so many people. You can just tell you're smiling. So go out there and keep doing it.
Carry on. You can hear a smile.
Yeah.
Like everybody's I'm just watching. They're just like, whoa, come on. Thank you.
We totally a great session to have with you guys. I wish we were at the conference and could share a lovely walk outside. Take care.
Merci tout le monde. Everybody have a great afternoon.